Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross told the Howie Carr radio show yesterday that he expects Canada's Parliament to pass the deal within the next couple of weeks. Joining me right now is U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. Mr. Secretary, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you, Maria.
So when could we expect sort of this into motion once Canada passes, as you're expecting? Tell us the first implication of this actually being the new law of the day.
Well, I think the first implication is capital expenditures. There's been a lot of concern on the part of executives just what will be the route going forward. Now they know what the roadmap will be. It's not controversial in Canada at all. It's just going through the mechanics. So there's a very, very high degree of certainty that it goes through. In fact, I was in Mexico City 2 days ago, and we implemented the first big step toward intellectual property rights by signing an agreement between the United States Patent and Trademark Office and their Mexican equivalent. So we're already beginning the very detailed implementing mechanisms to deal with the very important part, intellectual property rights.
Yeah, that's very important, actually. And, of course, this is right on top of what you've just done with China. What's your best expectation in terms of what this means for growth, economic growth in the U.S.? I've heard job creation from USMCA, anywhere from 100,000 to 600,000 new jobs created as a result of this new law. What's your estimate on jobs and economic growth, let's call it, for 2020 and 2021?
Right. Well, the reason that there's a big range is that a lot of the industries, particularly automotive, are pretty cyclical. So the amount of jobs that will be created is partly a function of where we are in the automotive cycle. But if you take the optimistic part, it could be 579,000 jobs, almost 600,000 jobs, and 235 billion added to our gross domestic product. That's about 1.2% of our GDP. So it'll be some major fraction of that gradually phased in over the first few years. So it's a very big initial lift, and it's one of the many reasons I think it's almost physically impossible for there to be a recession this year.
Physically?
Because you have because USMCA will add something. The absence of the General Motors strike will add a fraction of a percent. The trade deal with Japan, both in digital and especially in agriculture, will add a fraction. And we redid our trade deal with the Koreans. So when you add all of those together, you allow that there won't be the GM strike, and hopefully at some point during this year, Boeing will recover from the 737 MAX, and that was probably 1/4 point on GDP. So if you allow for those specific factors, and then another big one. Last year, wages went up, employment went up, but we only got the benefit in consumer spending of that for about half the year on average. Now we'll have all those for a full year. So when you add all those together, add in the continuing strength in consumer confidence, add in the fact that consumer savings rate went up pretty well last year despite the very good spending, so they're not out of powder. So you add all that together, I don't see a recession.
Well, that's great to hear, obviously, and you've got a lot of positives there to talk about the boosting of economic growth. This morning, though, there's this new worry about coronavirus. So if you were to see, I mean, look at all of these companies, Secretary, that are closing shop in China. You know, you've got airlines, stopping any flights going into China. You could seriously see the Chinese economy come to a halt, and given the large percentage of global growth that China commands, does that actually threaten what you're just saying?
Well, first of all, every American's heart has to go out to the victims of the coronavirus. So I don't want to talk about a victory lap over a very unfortunate, very malignant disease. But the fact is, it does give businesses yet another thing to consider when they go through their review of their supply chain. On top of all the other things, because you had SARS, you have the African swine virus there, now you have this. It's another risk factor that people need to take into account. So I think it will help to accelerate the return of jobs to North America, some to U.S., probably some to Mexico as well.
Oh, that's a good point, actually, yeah, because these companies have to do something. They're going to have an alternative once they shut down things in China, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, and you've already heard Apple talking about figuring out how to replace some of the Chinese production. You had others also doing the same thing. And so I think there's a confluence of factors that will make it very, very likely more reshoring to the U.S. and some reshoring to Mexico.
Let me ask you what the next priorities are in terms of trade. Secretary, Brexit is obviously done. Britain poised to leave the EU tomorrow after a final vote on Wednesday, teeing up the trade negotiations between the UK and the rest of the world. The president has been pretty adamant in saying, look, UK is going to be there for us and we're going to be there for them in terms of a trade deal. Is the UK likely a priority before the EU, or is India the next priority? What is it?
Well, many countries are priorities, but the president has made clear when we had our bilaterals at the World Economic Forum in Davos that EU and Britain are big priorities, and he would hope to get one or both of those done this calendar year. Mechanically, UK is probably easier. Its economy is much more similar to ours than either of ours is to the EU, is number one. Number two, a big part of both economies is financial services and other services, and those are pretty well integrated already.
Yeah.
Further, UK decision-making process is much simpler than the EU. When you negotiate with the EU, each time there's to be a major change in their negotiating position, they have to go back and get a mandate from every single one of the what will be 27 countries in the EU. That makes it very hard to deal quickly. So I think there's a reasonable chance that we'll first make a deal with UK, not that we're pushing it over EU,
right?
But assuming we do, then that will put the EU in the very interesting position of having to negotiate with the combination of the U.S. and the U.K.
Ah, that is interesting. And then I know India is on your list as well at some point. Yes. What's your take on Huawei entering the U.K.? Britain on Tuesday really basically shirking off U.S. concerns, allowing the Chinese telecom giant to participate, even in a limited way, in its high-speed wireless network, 5G, excluding it from, quote, core parts. But, Secretary, you know, your colleague, Secretary Pompeo, was in this studio over a year ago. Right. And he said to me, if Europe uses Huawei infrastructure, the U.S. will be forced to share less information. There are back doors. That data goes directly back to the communist government. And here you have the U.K. saying, yeah, OK, Huawei, you can participate in our 5G infrastructure on a limited basis.
Well, first of all, we have to see exactly how it's implemented. What they're trying to do is to truncate the portion of the service that can come from 5G from Huawei. They've said they'll limit it to 35% of the equipment. They're trying to limit it to very specific parts that they view pose less of a security threat. Our view is if it's too dangerous to trust them with the whole thing, it's too dangerous to trust them with any part of it. So we have a much more holistic view of the situation. So I'm glad that they at least recognize that there are serious issues with Huawei. We don't think that their solution goes as far as it should, because think about it. What does 5G mean? It means the Internet of Things. Everything is going to be connected to every other thing, and everything is going to be connected to every person. How much risk can you take when your entire system is up for grabs in case you got your judgment wrong. We just think it's too big a risk for anybody to take. And it isn't a protectionist thing by the U.S. We don't have a Huawei equivalent right now.
Yeah.
I think we will in a year or two because our tech companies are working very hard not only to catch up to Huawei, but to leapfrog them and go beyond. So there's also the danger that UK faces that by going Huawei, they commit themselves to what could turn out to be not the leading edge technology.
Yeah.
It's very rare. Just take it with the iPhones. Very rare that the first product is the ultimate best product because technology changes. We learn from things as we go. But the main reason we oppose it is we just think it's too big a risk to take.
Yeah.
If you were thinking about buying a nice new car and there were only a 10% chance that you would be killed the first time you drove that car, would you buy it?
No.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. But I think, look, I understand the issues very well, Secretary, and the Huawei situation is certainly something we will be watching closely. It's great to see you this morning, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Secretary Wilbur Ross joining us there.